Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. The Bible tells one big story of redemption, and we want to spend 5 minutes every day journeying through the Bible from start to finish and exploring how all of it points to Jesus.
Hey all, welcome back. Since you have reached chapter 12, you are halfway through the book of 2 Samuel, and things are about to get pretty interesting, but not in a good way. We know that David is a man after God's own heart, and that the Lord will have Jesus come through David's line to be the great and final king who has been promised. David foreshadows Christ, but David is flawed. He is just like what we said, a shadow of what is to come. But in these chapters we remember, Jesus is better. He does what David could not do. He lives a perfect life and walks in full obedience to God. Chapter 10 opens with David sending some of his servants to comfort the son of Hanun, the king of the Ammonites. The Ammonites were normally enemies of Israel, but Hanun had dealt loyally with David, so David wanted to act in kindness towards him. But David's kindness is met with a swift slap in the face, as Hanun's son had the servants' beards cut short and also exposed them by cutting their garments off at the hips. The text tells us they became a stench to David and decided to try and defeat him before he could do anything to them. But the Ammonites failed, and David was victorious. The Lord is bringing the enemies of David low. But after this moment of great victory, David becomes comfortable, and he stays home from battle when his men are out fighting the enemies of the Lord. And while he's home and walking about on his rooftop, he spots a beautiful woman named Bathsheba bathing. He knows who she is and that she's married, and he also knows her husband is away, so he sends for her. And when the king sends for you, you come. David commits an abuse of power against Bathsheba. He takes her for himself and sleeps with her. It's a horrible story, and it will keep getting worse because there are always consequences for our sin, and they don't just affect us alone. They affect others around us too. The hero of our story has fallen, but we need to remember his sin did not just randomly happen. David had made choices for a long time that went against what the Lord commanded him, especially when it came to marriage. He had multiple wives and concubines, and David was sexually promiscuous. But this time, he took a woman who was already married. He committed a sin that was punishable by death, and Bathsheba conceives after he sleeps with her, so there is no hiding this offense. David acts quickly and tries to have Bathsheba's husband Uriah come back from battle, but Uriah does not go home to enjoy time with his wife. He tells David to do so would dishonor his brothers who are fighting. Uriah is a good man, and he is loyal to David and the Lord, and David has deeply wronged him. And instead of repenting and seeking restoration with Uriah, David has Uriah murdered in order to cover what he has done. The Lord sends Nathan the prophet to confront David, and he does so with a story. I won't go into all the details of the story here since you can read it, but it deeply moves David. And when Nathan finally tells David that the story is about him, it's like you can feel the weight of this confrontation. And while the Messiah will come from David's line, there's an ominous message for David. Because of his disobedience, the sword will not depart from his family. Trouble is brewing. There is another terrible consequence for this sin. The child Bathsheba is pregnant with will pass away. David fasts and seeks the Lord about this when the child is born, but the answer remains the same, and David accepts it. But the Lord will give David and Bathsheba another son, Solomon. And though he will also make many mistakes, just like his father, Solomon will love the Lord. He will be the son of David who builds God's house. God chooses the son, who is probably despised by many, to be the next king of Israel. The story is a tragic reminder to us of how sin creeps at the door for even those who deeply love God. We cannot become comfortable or think we are immune to sin. We'll struggle with sin until we go to be with Jesus. We need accountability, and we need the strength of God. But even though David's sin is horrific, he repents, and God forgives him. There's no sin God cannot forgive. But this does not mean that when he forgives us, there will not be consequences for what we have done. But we know that he disciplines us and allows us to experience those consequences because he loves us. We are his children, and we can trust our Heavenly Father. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you tomorrow for more from the life of David. And if you have a minute, we would love if you would leave us a review for our podcast. We love to see your encouraging words and thoughts about what you're thinking. It gives us a lot of joy. We'll see you back here tomorrow.